Well, hello, this is a special edition of the videos. We're not continuing the series of Deuteronomy or of John's Gospel. But I want to say a little about the virgin birth, as it's Christmas. And let me say straight off, I absolutely believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. So I want to say a little about why I'm so happy to say that. Some people, skeptics, will say, oh, it's nonsense, you've got to have virgin births. Well, that's the whole point. It's a miracle. It's a unique event. And so saying it's impossible is one of the silliest arguments. Obviously it doesn't mean it did happen. Say anything is impossible. But it's not ridiculous at all. In fact, theologically, it's essential. Just first of all, about it not being a ridiculous notion. God is the creator of the whole universe. Everything in it, everyone in it. So if God is the creator of the whole universe, a virgin birth should not be beyond his capabilities. The real miracle is that God became man, that God sent his Son to dwell amongst us as a human being. That's the real miracle. And in a sense, the virgin birth, it's not the birth of Jesus is perfectly normal. It was the conception that was unusual. Nothing to do with the birth, totally, perfectly normal. It's where Jesus was conceived that is unusual. And if God is going to come to earth, if God is going to send his Son, the fact that things are a wee bit different, again, no surprise. And someone might go, well, the New Testament doesn't make much of it. Like the beginning of Matthew's Gospel, the beginning of Luke's Gospel, that's where you get the virgin birth stuff. If you look at the preaching of Acts, it's not mentioned, at least not directly. Now let's have a look at why that is. There was another feature of the preaching in Acts. They are forever going on about the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus. They have no qualms whatsoever about preaching about the resurrection of Jesus. Indeed, it is central to an awful lot of the preaching that takes place in there. And yet, they don't preach about the virgin birth. Why? Because the virgin birth is not important? No. There was evidence for the resurrection. They could prove it. All the apostles had witnessed, they'd met the risen Jesus. And several hundred other people had been witnesses had seen the risen Christ. Then you've got the fact of the empty tomb. Well, if he didn't rise from the dead, where's his body? Where's his body? Show it, go on, show it to us. And they couldn't, because the tomb is empty. Didn't do anything about it. So they could, and there's other things as well. I'm not going to go into all the arguments for the resurrection. But it's the best explanation what happened. It was backed up by events, by facts. And you can still make very good arguments today for the resurrection. You can't prove the virgin birth. So I'm going to argue that it's perfectly reasonable and theologically essential. But you can't prove it in the same way that you can prove the resurrection. So that's why the early church, why it is not featured in the preaching in Acts in the same way that the resurrection of Jesus is repeatedly featured in there. And it says central to all the preaching there. And so why do I keep saying it's theologically essential? Jesus is the Son of God. He was sent by the Father. He came from heaven. So, and if he'd been just being conceived in the normal way, so it's not the virgin birth, it's not a virgin birth, it's a virgin conception. If he'd been conceived in the normal way, well, he wouldn't have been God actually, and he wouldn't have been. Jesus came to die. He came to be presented as a sacrifice who would pay the price for all our sins. And he could only do that, one, because he's the Son of God, and two, because he was totally without sin. If he'd been born in the normal way, again, conceived in the normal way, that wouldn't have been true. He'd been infected with sin like the rest of us. And it's not a matter that God looked and said, oh, there's a good person, I'll choose him as my son. I'll make him the Messiah. That's not what happened. God the Father sent the Son in order to save us. So I say that I have no problems whatsoever with the virgin birth of Jesus. No, even the virginal conception of Jesus. It's not a problem to me. I say theologically it's essential. You've got enormous problems if Jesus was not born of a virgin birth. So, there it is, just a short video, a few words on why I believe in the virgin birth of Jesus, and I'm quite happy to say so. Merry Christmas to all of you.